Right.
Yeah, some of these verses were a little tricky on translation, at least for me.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I don't know. If you're losing your voice, we probably ought to use you first so we can use you.
Oh, ouch.
Chris, would you read this for us first?
Yes, I can do that. 1 Corinthians 12:22. Allah palo malon ta doik unta malay tu sumatos aston estira hupar kin ana ka let's see ana Gaia esti. And I have, but much more, those seeing members of the body seem to be weaker are indispensable.
All right. Okay, much more of them would seem to be feeble. Okay, so how'd you render that again now?
But much more, those seeming members of the body, which seem to be weaker, I put that at which seem, I put in parentheses, to be weaker are indispensable. Or that are, the that are is added and they are just to make it readable.
Did you translate from the text we have here, or did you use your own text?
That should be your text.
Okay. All right. Seeming to be feeble. This word here.
I made that weaker.
Weaker. Weaker is good. That's wrong. Weaker.
I also used weak, who seeming to be weak members.
Seeming to be weak.
I made it a comparative there. Comparative of the other, so I put for the comparative.
Now he's talking about the body, see, and he's saying the parts of the body that seem to be the most feeble. Well, I have a hard time figuring out which organs he's talking about. Okay, because there are organs that are vital to our life itself, and we don't think much about them. Like your thyroid gland, if you lose it, you're going to have some real trouble, So I don't know what he's talking about here, which particular organs, right? It seems to be more feeble. It's possible Paul's referring back to verse 21, saying that the hand seems to be feebler than the eye, feet seem to be feebler than the head. That might be what he's referring back to, right? And you got any ideas about what organs he might be using to illustrate this? Well, I didn't either.
I don't know.
But I don't think it really matters that much what organs particular. We deem that some parts of our body are not really that essential, and when we get to studying on it, we find out they are. I'm reminded of the atheists. They used to say, well, the presence of vestigial organs in the body prove that organic evolution occurred, because we have organs we don't use. So they used to regularly just take your appendix out. Well, now they found out it's very useful. It has a use. And so I know they used to regularly just take your tonsils and adenoids out. Well, they have a function in the body. And so all of these so-called vestigial organs, they found out none of them are vestigial anymore on the human body. Every one of them, they found out had a purpose. They had this idea, if we know of a purpose and there is one, we don't know of a purpose, therefore there's not one. Of course, that's a fallacious reasoning. It was ever in the logic class on Monday night. And of course, that's denying the antecedent if you frame it properly as they're arguing. So again, we don't know. Something may seem feeble to us, it may have seemed feeble to them, but it's all necessary. That's what Paul's saying. There's not any part of the body that's unnecessary. Everything God put in the body has a purpose. That's my interpretation here. And so,
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I didn't take it as a reference to a specific member of the body, but rather a generic sense that whichever one you consider not to be necessary, it is.
Yeah.
But, the one that you consider to be weak, it's necessary.
Yeah.
So I didn't see it as hand or eye or anything like that, but rather a generic reference to whatever your opinion is, it's necessary.
Yeah, every member of the body is using the human body as an illustration of it. Every part of it has a purpose, and there's no vestigial organ. This verse tells me there's not, but this is telling me no such thing as vestigial organ. See, they said it was a vestige of our evolutionary background. Okay, and one of my uncles, he traced back our family lineage back to about the year 1000, back nearly over 1,000 years back with records in Germany. And he jokingly said, I nearly got back to the monkey. And he laughed. Of course, he was a member of the church. He was laughing, but he said it. Okay. We all laughed at him. Okay. Because none of us believed it. We came from monkeys. Okay. But I translated, but much rather these members of the body that seem to be feebler are necessary. And I think members of the church that seem like they don't contribute very much, maybe they do contribute things. We don't realize it. We've got a widow woman that she comes to services pretty regularly, and she's there and very. She sings and participates in the worship and everything, but of course she's not preaching, and she's in her 80s, and so she's no longer teaching Bible classes and all, but she still contributes. Her presence, she's so pleasant. Her presence is an encouragement to other people. She just encourages them with words she says, and so sometimes we don't even realize how they can contribute. And every part of the body has a purpose. It's necessary. All right, any questions? So if you think you're important, you may not be any more important than anybody else. All right. And I don't think we need to elevate ourselves with arrogance. I think you just can't do without me. I hope I can work for the Lord for many more years, but however long I get to work, I want to, hopefully I can help to lead men and women that can do a greater work than I've done. That's what I'd like to have. But let's go back to verse 23. Any questions? Verse 23. Okay. Shane, are you going to translate or are you just going to read? What are you going to do?
I'll read.
Okay. You want to read for James, since his voice is playing out a little bit?
Sure. Oh, I was just kidding on that.
Oh, you were? Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Go ahead, James, and read for us if you would. Okay.
Kaiha dokumen ati motera and I tu samotas tutois temin perisoteran peritathamen kai ta aska mona amon eske mo usanen perisoteran ekai.
Okay. Go ahead, James, and help us with this, if you will.
Okay. And which we think to be without honor of the body, to these we treat with abundant honor, and the unattractive of us, the body has abundant attractiveness.
All right. What doesn't seem very good looking doesn't attract us very much. All right. I know in this context there were some that thought tongue speaking was more important than prophesying. Prophesying was not very glamorous, but it was more important prophesying occur. We're going to see that later than tongue speaking. Not that tongue speaking didn't have a purpose, it did. But he's going to get to the miraculous gifts and their misunderstandings, and he's using this. And so those parts of the body that which we deem to be honorable, less honorable. Now, what we have here, you notice here, this is Tim A. That's the honor, and the alpha privative on the front of it there makes it unhonorable or dishonorable, right? And he's opposed to in doxos. Doxos is to glorify, and in, so this is to really get into it and glorify something, right? So it's not honored as much, right? And he's going to make application of this to the various miraculous gifts eventually. So what you don't deem to be honorable may be really honorable. On these we bestow more abundant honor. So organs which Paul refers to, organs that did not deem to be essential, would not deem to be honorable. That's my thinking on it. What do you think there, James? Any comments there?
No, sir, I think you're hitting right on it.
Okay. And of course, he's just using the body as an illustration, and to illustrate a lesson he's going to make a little bit later in the next few verses.
Yeah, I had a debate when I was doing the translation on the difference between member and part, and whether or not one would be preferred over the other.
Well,
They're pretty much synonyms in this case, I would think.
well, we have parts, and these two words in the American Standard and the King James are in italics. Okay, parts. American Standard had it parts, both places, and we have members and parts in the King James. And of course, both words are in italics. The reason the King James was members of the body, that usually is a bodily part. The word member is.
Right.
Right. So, probably why they translated it that way. Uncomely, and that is not attractive. Okay. Now I look at it. My old elbow is not very pleasing to look at. You don't get a lot of excitement looking at someone's elbows, but they have a function, and they're very useful because the arm gets to bend, and that elbow is able to flex and move and function quite well. I don't think necessarily your knees are all that comely to look at, but again, they have other functions like the elbow, pretty similar. I don't know, some people's ears aren't good looking, but the ears are a fantastic apparatus, particularly the outer part of the ear. Everything has to be matched like the transmission in a car, it matches the engine to the wheels, to the rotating part of the wheels. And it makes it efficiently to transfer the energy from the engine to the wheels. And we know from engineering and physics that there is an optimum of efficiency. Race car drivers know, for example, a certain RPM of an engine, it's more efficient at a certain RPM. And so things work efficiently. And so I think we get into things like my ear, for example, the outer part of the ear, the parts you see, it's extremely efficient at transferring sound that's out in the air into my auditory canal, down the hole that goes in the side of my head down to the eardrum. And it's amazing how well it transfers that energy. I took a course in acoustics in college, and it was amazing. And I began to see very clearly that God made that ear so wonderful. If you cut a person's ears off, he can't hear worth a flip. He's still got his eardrums, but the ear funnels that sound into that auditory canal. And God made a wonderful organ there. And some ears aren't very good looking, but they sure function well. Okay. All right. That's my getting off on a tangent there. Any questions? It has more abundant comeliness. And I use the ear as an illustration of it. I think that that ear, it may not look very pretty, but boy, it functions well. And does a fantastic job. I translated in those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncommon members have more abundant comeliness. If we really see things, how they fit together, and the parts of the human body all have a function, and they all work just fantastically. So well. All right. How much I'm preaching too much. Any questions, comments? Okay, verse 24, back to Chris, if we would.
Okay. Ta de euskemona emon u krian eke al o theo sun ek rasin to soma to huster uti perisoteron dos temain. I have that, but are presentable or comely, and in parts, parentheses, of us have no need, but the God has composed the body together, giving more abundant honor to the part, being in parentheses here, being deficient.
Okay. Part lacking, both King James, being deficient is good rendering. But our comely parts. Now this is very interesting, because right here, and I'll put a space in. The U in the beginning here is the word for good, and it's come into the English language. Euphemism, euthanasia, good killing, which there's no such thing. But we use this word, this prefix in English, and of course this is a figure. So right over here you had U and schema. It's a figure. So it's something good to look at, see. That's what he said, comely. Comely is a good rendering. And here are the places that word's found. And you have no need. And no need because I think these parts have no need because we care for them, because we're so important to us, because they're so comely, so good. Some people spend a lot of time fixing their hair, for example. I'm kind of reminded of that, or powdering their nose, or whatever they're doing, making things look good. But God, notice the body is Allah. So this is a new category of things. See, we do this, but God does what? He tempered the body. He put it all together, giving more abundant honor to what? To that part which lacked. So the things that we don't think are important become important. As I was telling you earlier, they used to take out your tonsils, and they take your appendix out because they didn't think you had a need for it. And so they'll take out certain parts of the body and do that because they thought it was vestigial. And they used to think the thyroid gland was vestigial, for example. And they learned pretty quick that wasn't true. But all of these organs that are supposed to be vestigial, they've decided they have a purpose. So God had a reason for it to be there. Paul does not identify what specific parts of the body that lacked, but it's not really critical again. Some societies think certain things are beautiful to look at more than others. I don't know. Some people like to look at people's noses and ears and eyes, and I just we look primarily at people's faces usually. That's what we look at. I translate, whereas our comely parts have no need, probably because we care for them, but God tempered the body together, giving more abundant honor to that part which that lacked. So the very parts that they were deeming to be unimportant were really more important and had more honor in God's eyes. And I think he's laying the groundwork for their thinking tongue speaking was the cat's meow. And lo and behold, it was it was the bottom of the totem pole. And the real important gift was prophesying. And the teaching and prophesying gifts were much more important than tongue speaking. Tongue speaking had a purpose, however. I think he's laying a groundwork for it. And whatever it was that he's talking about here, I think that's what the lesson we need to get. Questions or comments? All right. Shane, I'm going to skip you and go let James read, okay? That's all right.
That's fine.
All right, go ahead, James, verse 25.
Hiname he schisma ento somati alato auto huper alelon merimnosin ta mele. And I translated verse 25 as that there may be no division in the body, but the parts may have the same concern for one another.
No schism or division in the body. There are two words here, and we don't get into them very much. When I went through and studied the Bible in a preacher training school, it was on Saturdays. They'd have 6 hours classes every Saturday. I went for 4 years. And whenever we were in one of the classes, one of the teachers had written a tract, and I have the tract, just have one copy of it, so I'm not going to let you have it. But he went through this word here, this schisma, and another word or two that's related to it, and showed the basis of it. One of the words was beginning to tear something and starting to rend to tear something. And the other was where you actually had already torn it into 2 pieces. And so that was very interesting. And so right here, should be no schisma, division, or dissension. Here are the places that word's found. And it's a cleft or a rent, a tear in it, okay? I think here, this word here is whether you've torn it into 2 pieces, or maybe more than 2. It shouldn't be a schism, a tearing or rending of the body. And he created the body in a manner that didn't cause division. There's no division, there shouldn't be no division in the church as well, the spiritual body of Christ. Because it's patterned after the physical body is patterned, he's used as a pattern for the church here. The puffed up nature of some of the Corinthians caused division. We see that back in chapter 1, verse 10 and 11, 18. Here's some other passages where that's a problem. So, but now see, the members should have the same. Now again, Allah introduces a new, completely, it's a different category of things. Okay? The first category is that which has schism or division in the body. And the second is the members should care one for another. So that's a completely different category of things. Those cause division don't care for one another. So they're not taking care and helping one another. They're not anxious or troubled about They don't care for the other people. They don't seek to promote the interest of another person. It's self-serving more. So again, that Allah up here shows that sharp contrast. Again, we should always be concerned about other people and their salvation. Jesus is our primary example of this, our first and foremost example, because he left heaven and came to the earth because he cared for people and wanted them to be saved. That and was crucified and went through all of what he went through in order to save us. Questions or comments? Now, Paul used this word, for the care that a person should have for his spouse. We saw this back in chapter 7, verse 32, 33, and 32 twice there. Remember that a husband and wife are one flesh, one body. As a pattern, probably a type and a type for Christ in his church. I think marriage was probably a type. And God created animals that can reproduce without sexual reproduction. An amoeba does, and there's other animals, even higher forms of animals like lizards. There's some lizards that don't have to have bisexual reproduction. Sometimes when they don't have the other person to mate with, they'll actually clone themselves and make an offspring. They'll actually fertilize their own eggs, and that'll happen. And there's some animals that do that. They've found out. But I think God gave the marriage as a pattern. I think it's a type of the church. I think we can see this from these passages in Genesis 2:24, 1 Corinthians 6:16, Ephesians 5:22 through 33. So Paul uses the word alevon. This is another of the same nature in these passages. Concern for one another of the same nature. A fellow Christian here in this context. He's going to make it applicable to that. Going to develop it more in verse 26. I went ahead with the word schism, but there should be no schism in the body, but that the members might have the same care one for another. We need to care for other people, care for their souls. All right, I'm preaching too much. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, the thing that struck me when I saw your translation and some of the others I've seen it the same way, I use the word concern versus care. The concern can be mental, at least in English. And yeah, I'm real concerned about my friend that's sick. It doesn't mean I'm doing anything. The care seems to imply a little bit more than that, as in taking some action.
Yeah.
I would lean more toward care than as in the translation instead of the concern, which I used.
Okay. Well, there's a subtlety in the words, and your point is correct. Some words have a more reactive thrust into them here. There's more reaction, more things being done. I can let's see. There's two words: empathy and. I can sympathize with you, but whenever I really do something, we have to use a different word. Okay? Actually, do something. I'm at a loss for the English word that'll fit there. Right. Let's move on. I've got it in some passages of my notes. I remember. Even have a sermon on it. I can't remember what it is. I've got so many sermons that I preached. All right. I'll think of it later. When I'm asleep tonight, I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking of that word. Okay. That's what'll happen. All right. Let's go back to the next one. Chris, can you read this next one for us?
Yes. Kai Aete. pasque, hin, melos, sum paseke, panta, ta, malay, ete, doxa, zetai, hin, melos, sug, kaire, panta, ta, malay. I have, and if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it.
Well, what happens in your body if you get a toothache? You just almost hurt all over, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. I know the other night got up and did something, and I stubbed my toe, one of my toes, on the side of the cabinet, and I was trying to walk through the house. But I wouldn't turn the lights on. I was trying to save electricity. I'm a tree hugger, okay? So anyhow, I stubbed one of my little toes, not the little toe, but on my left foot. And I think it's that one next to the little toe that I hit. But it was hurting for a while there, and I had trouble getting back to sleep because my toe was hurting. And so it affected my whole body. So when one member suffers, the others suffer with it. And I want you to notice here, I want you to see this. I'm going to break this word here. See that word right there? That word right there is the same word as right over here. It just has soon with it, and that is it was soon the sigma epsilon nu with, and the nu and the pi become a mu. So that's how it becomes a mem. So there's together. And I want you to notice another word. This also has Cairo is to be honored, to rejoice, that is to rejoice. And so again, we have soon, and the nu becomes a gamma here in this case. So we have the word, two words with the word soon with attached to them. And there's a subtlety when you run into, I think the book of Ephesians has a whole bunch of them that are that way, just one right after another. They all have that same prefix. Suffer with, rejoice with. So that's the word with, and it's with. And that's soon and soon. And soon and sug. But it's from soon, sigma epsilon nu. So whether one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. And all members rejoice with it. If a brother in Christ has some honor, he does something, we ought to all be happy for him. Don't be jealous over it. Just delighted that he's honored. And if he suffers, we need to feel that suffering with him. This is one reason I try to, as much as possible, when a member of the church is going to have some surgery or something done, I try to go be with them as much as I can. And if they're really having troubles, I try to be there and go and spend some time with them. Usually, you don't have to say very much. Sometimes I don't know what to say. I just am there, and I want to be with them. So we suffer with them. Okay. Now, wait a second here. The members suffer with. Members is plural, and our verb is singular. What's going on here? Help me out, somebody.
Collective noun?
Well, that's a possibility, but we have another rule. A noun and a pronoun, and the neuter plural is regularly followed by a verb in the singular. Because it's being collective, basically is why the reason. So it's what you're saying is correct because it's viewing things as a collection of things. Now we can say a sack of seed or a sack of seeds if we're depending on what we're stressing. And we use in English seed and seeds, we can use singular plural. Sack of seed, and we're just saying they're all the same stuff. And with sack of seeds, we're emphasizing each individual seed in it. All right, any question? The use of a singular verb for the suffering of the other members is depicted in collective action. And that's what you're saying here. I think that the church ought to all of the church suffers. If they're really what they ought to be when one another member is suffering, we feel the problems they have, and we try to help them as much as we can. I think it's more than just feeling it. I think it's we're trying to do something about it. For instance, when someone gets sick, I know the church, Barnes Church, where I'm a member, what'll happen is someone brings food over so that they won't have to cook. If the wife becomes sick, for example, they'll bring food over. And so this happens quite a lot. Someone gets sick or someone dies, for example, we take food and spend some time with them. Try to help them get through their troubles. If we really love our brother, we're going to feel grief at his sufferings. John 11:35. I think this is a depiction of the care that we should have one for another. Right, in verse 25. Or, all right, one member is honored, see. So now we have suffering or being honored. That's two ends of the spectrum. One gives you joy and feel good, the other makes you feel bad. And so he's honored, someone glorifies him. When a young person at church becomes a valedictorian in a class, for example, at their school or something to that effect, I try to really let them know I appreciate it. They do something like that. So that's one of the things. I want you to note that these verbs already have it here. They're emphatic forms with the preposition soon. Okay. Right. Note that we take care of ourselves, take upon ourselves the suffering of a brother. We do not take his honor away, however. We do take upon ourselves the suffering, but we don't take the honor away. So there's a difference in this. If we go back and look at it, we suffer with him, but we're not honored with him when he's honored. We rejoice with him because he's honored, see? So I don't take his honor away from him, but I do try to take his suffering away from him. So there's a subtle difference in those two. Try to help get the suffering away, but I don't take any honor away from him. Don't want to remove that. Let him get his honor, okay? Any comments? All right, verse 26, whether one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. One member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. And I put my footnotes in here. All members suffer together, members rejoice together. Okay. All right, verse 27. We're getting near the end of the chapter. I think it has about 29, 30, 31 verses. Right? Who read last? I forgot. Chris, did you read last?
Yes.
James, can you read this? I'm going to do my best to get Jerry Gore back in this class through the internet. Okay.
All right. Verse 27. Imeste esta soma Christu kai mele ek merus. And my translation is a little rough. I struggled with this one. I translated it as, and you are a body of Christ and members out of a part. And I looked at a number of other translations and I couldn't get there from the literal Greek there. personally. That's just me. I'm sure the problem's me, but some of them just didn't make a whole lot of sense based on the words that were there. You had to really read into it to get there.
Well, I think it's the elliptical statements, so some things are being left out, but I think,
I would agree.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
just couldn't get to the words that they used to make that translation work, even on an elliptical basis.
you are the body. Now, the word thee there, if there's only one body, you don't have to have the article make it definite. So we would put the word thee in English, but the Greek wouldn't necessarily do that. So that I don't have a problem with the word thee there because of that. Okay. And secondly, members and members thereof, your members out of it and out of a part of it. Your members out of, and Meirus is something shared, right? So your members out of this sharing. I think it may go back to the sharing of the prior verse. You're part of the whole, and your members in particular. I think the American Standard has members in particular. King James does. But I footnoted that members out of part. And again, we don't have to have an article out of the part. So we're parts of that body. And we're all members. We're parts of the body, I think. I think that's what he's saying. And he's telling us that we are like you may be an eye and I may be a toe, but we both have our part. We have our part to play. And so my hand is going to protect my eye. I go out in the woods and I have my hands. If I'm walking around trees that are low or bushes, I'm very quick to get my hand up if something is about to hit me in the eye. So I want to protect it. So I can care for the other. One part of the body cares for the other part of the body. I think members out of the part, out of that which is shared. See, this is from the word to share something. So maybe he's going back to the prior verses and kind of playing on them a bit. That's the best I can do. I don't know if that helps you.
I'll take another look at it, but I appreciate your thoughts.
All right, anybody else got any thoughts on it? Chris? Shane?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, let's try 28 now. This is a long one. Chris, you got a long one there.
Okay, I'll take it. Kai, us, min, etheto, ho, theos, in ta, ecclesia, proton, apostolus, deuteron, prophetes, triton, didaskalos, epite, dunamis, iete, charismata, Eamaton on tel a bis kub nasis gene glosson. And so I have, and some indeed he has appointed, God has appointed in the church, first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healing, helping, administrating various kinds of tongues.
Okay. So now he's talking about now, this is what he's been talking about with all these members. And of course, I think the church had great respect for the apostles. Here, I think we had a problem in Corinth of not understanding the purposes of miracles. We're going to see that in chapters 13 and 14. And thinking that tongue speaking was more important than other gifts. It's flashy. We're impressed by someone who can speak several foreign languages. If you got up and fluently spoke these foreign languages, which you'd be able to do if you had the gift of tongue speaking, you could speak fluently any foreign language that you needed to speak. That would be quite impressive. I think it'd be very impressive to see that. I think I would be wowed and awed by it. Because I've studied some foreign languages and I still have my trouble trying to pronounce stuff. All right. And I let my Oklahoma accent get into the picture and it causes a problem. Okay. But right here, he lists the first gift in the church was apostleship. Now, let me lay this out. I want you to, I don't know how much time we have. We're pretty close to the end. I want you to look at Ephesians chapter 4 with me. Open your Bibles to Ephesians 4. I want you to see something here. And this, I think, will help us to kind of see what's going on. He's listing the miraculous gifts here in 1 Corinthians 12:28, what we see on the screen. But what we find here, Paul begins to talk about, and he talks about Christ, and he says, but, verse 7, Ephesians 4:7, unto each one of us was the grace given. And I think grace is not the grace of salvation. I think it's the favor of it being given a miraculous gift, according to the measure of the gift of Christ. So the gifts were measured out according to what Christ wanted the gifts to be. Now, he said, wherefore he saith, and Christ saith, when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive, gave gifts unto men. I want you to do something for me for your own edification. Go back to the passage that this is a quote from in back in the book of Psalms, and you'll see something very interesting, because our passage here says gave gifts unto men, but the book of Psalms and the King James American Standard, I think both have this, receive gifts for men. And so gave and receive are two different things. So we get into a problem here. What does it mean? Is there a mistranslation? The answer is no, because the Hebrew word means to fetch something and go fetch it and bring it back. So Jesus went to heaven to receive gifts that he could send back to man. And that's what he's talking about in the context. Now, in verse 9 and 10, it's a parenthetical statement. He talks about him ascending, and descending. Let's skip down to verse 11. And he gave some to be apostles, and some prophets, and some pastors, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers. He, Jesus, gave, the first gift he gave was that of apostleship. So Jesus went to heaven, came and sent back and gave the gift of apostleship. Now, wait a second. I thought they were already apostles in Matthew 10. There are 4 kinds of apostles in the New Testament. There may be more. I may have missed that, but I know there are at least 4. Hebrews 3:1, apostles of God. That would be Jesus in that context. Someone sent by God to do a job. Or apostles under the limited commission, and that would include the 12, including Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot took his own life and was replaced by Matthias in Acts 1. Then this is the second apostleship we see, or third, actually. The first being Jesus as apostle of God, Hebrews 3:1. And then in the 10th chapter of Matthew, we see the 12 that were sent out on the limited commission, was called. And now then we have what's called the Great Commission. Those men set out on that role, would be apostles under that commission. And Judas Iscariot wasn't one of those. He didn't have that. He didn't have that apostleship. Matthias took his place, and then we have Paul coming in as the 13th apostle. And so now this apostleship came after Jesus ascended to heaven. And he sent it back. He sent it. He gave these gifts unto men. The first gift he gave was apostleship. Well, the first gift given was in Acts chapter 2, and that was baptism in the Holy Spirit. Any questions? Anybody? That's just something for you to study on and cogitate on. All right. I don't know that we've gotten through this. Let's see if we can finish this first. Maybe we ought to start back on it again next week. We've gone nearly an hour. All right. But these gifts, the first one given, let's start on this verse again next week. I kind of want to dwell a little more on it. Is that all right? Any questions? Start at verse 28 next week. We should finish the chapter, get into chapter 13, and we'll see how that flows in as well. All right, any questions?